They were born minutes apart, three inseparable sisters who shared not just a birthday, but a bond that no one could break, until the summer of 1999, when all three vanished from their backyard without a trace. For years, their names faded into cold case files. Then two sets of remains were discovered in a dense forest, buried side by side. The third sister, Layla Monroe, was never found. Until one rainy night, 23 years later, a knock echoed at the family's old house. When the door creaked open, a woman whispered, "Mama?" What happened to Layla? Why did she survive? And what dark truth has she carried in silence for more than 2 decades? Camille Johnson wasn't supposed to be at that pharmacy that day. Her usual spot on the corner of Westlake and Auburn Avenue was closed for renovations, so she drove 3 extra blocks in the July heat, clutching her prescription slip in one hand and her nearly depleted wallet in the other. The sun was merciless, bouncing off the hot pavement as she walked through the automatic glass doors. Inside, the air was cool, crisp, a little too clean-smelling, antiseptic, and fluorescent. She had no idea that her entire life was about to tilt on its axis. As she approached the counter, she glanced up and froze. 3 young women stood behind the counter, all in matching white coats, their dark curls pulled into neat buns, gold name tags glinting under the overhead lights. They moved gracefully, professionally, like synchronized dancers. But Camille's breath caught, not because of their efficiency or appearance, but because she knew those faces. Her knees buckled slightly and she gripped the edge of the counter for support. 3 faces, 3 smiles. 3 versions of a memory that had haunted her dreams for more than 2 decades. "Can I help you, ma'am?" one of them asked. Her voice was calm, polite, professional. But to Camille, it echoed with ghosts. She blinked rapidly. The girl had a tiny crescent-shaped scar above her left eyebrow, the same place where little Nia had fallen off her tricycle at age 3. Next to her, another girl adjusted a tray of vitamin bottles with the same focused frown that Layla had whenever she was trying to color inside the lines. And the third, Amara, tilted her head and smiled the way Camille remembered from bedtime stories when she used to say, "One more, Mama, please." Camille couldn't speak. Her voice had evaporated. She tried to offer the slip of paper, but her hand trembled so badly it nearly slipped from her fingers. "Are you okay, Mom?" the first girl asked, concern flickering in her eyes. "Would you like to sit down? You look a little pale." Camille forced a smile. Her lips felt numb. I'm all right," she whispered, barely recognizing her own voice. The third girl, Amara, walked around the counter and gently took her arm. "Let me get you some water." Camille could feel her heart pounding in her ears, the blood rushing like a storm. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to grab them and say, "My babies, my girls, you're alive, you're here." But they didn't recognize her. They treated her with the same careful kindness they offered every customer. They didn't know her. Do all 3 of you work here together?" Camille asked, her voice cracking. The second girl nodded. "We're sisters. We just graduated from Mercer College of Pharmacy. Our uncle owns this place, so he gave us our first job." Camille's world spun. Uncle. That name again. Which uncle?" she asked, heart racing. The 3 girls exchanged glances, a flicker of discomfort passing between them. "Uncle Darnell," the first girl answered. "He raised us." Darnell Carter. The man who had hated Camille from the moment she married his brother. The man who once said, "A woman like you ain't fit to raise a houseplant, let alone 3 girls." Camille's stomach turned. "That's wonderful," she managed. "You all look so alike." "Everyone says that," said the second girl, smiling. "He calls us his 3 little queens." That phrase hit her like a gut punch. 3 little queens was what she used to whisper every night before bed. "Good night, my little queens. May your dreams be golden." Camille turned away before the tears spilled. She clutched the edge of her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. "You sure you're all right?" Amara asked gently. Camille nodded, afraid to open her mouth. Her mind raced. She had spent 23 years imagining worst-case scenarios: abduction, trafficking, death. And here they were, grown, healthy, beautiful, safe. But they had no idea she existed. They thought she was dead. She had been erased. "Have you always lived in Atlanta?" Camille asked, grasping for more. "All our lives," the second girl said. "Same house on MLK Drive, since we were 4. Camille's legs gave out for a split second, and she leaned harder on the counter. That house. The same house she had driven past hundreds of times in desperation. The house Darnell lived in, the house she had never been allowed to enter. "And your parents?" she asked, nearly afraid to hear the answer. Silence fell. The 3 sisters looked at each other again. "Our mother passed when we were very little," said the first one softly. "And our dad, he couldn't take care of us." Camille bit her lip. "Passed?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes," said the girl. "Uncle Darnell told us she died in the hospital. He said she was very sick." A sob rose in Camille's chest like fire, and she forced it down. "I'm very sorry for your loss," she said, and barely made it out the door. Outside, the summer heat slammed into her. She walked around the corner, ducked behind a tree, and let the tears come. 23 years. She had searched, cried, prayed. She had fought the courts, the police, her own despair. And the whole time they had been less than 2 miles away, thinking she was dead. She slid down against the wall, her palms against her eyes, her shoulders shaking. What was she supposed to do now? Storm in and announce herself? Ruin the only stability her daughters had known? Or turn away again and lose them forever? She pulled out her wallet and looked at the only photo she carried, a wrinkled, faded picture of 3 little girls in matching yellow dresses, arms around each other, grinning with missing teeth. The last birthday she spent with them. That photo had slept under her pillow for over 2 decades. She had bought a birthday gift every year since then and stored them in labeled boxes in her tiny apartment, just in case this day ever came. Now it had, and she had no idea what to do with it. She stood, brushed off her clothes, and took one long breath. She couldn't tell them, not yet, but she couldn't walk away either. She had found them, and that meant something. She needed to know more. Who were they now? What kind of women had they become? Did they laugh like she used to? Did they like music? Did they dream big? She needed to find out, and slowly, carefully, she would, even if it took time, even if it broke her again, because they were her daughters, and she had waited long enough. Camille lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her tiny 1-bedroom apartment as the city outside pulsed with sirens, distant voices, and the low hum of traffic that never seemed to sleep. Her thoughts refused to quiet, images colliding in her mind, their faces, their voices, the sound of one of them humming softly behind the pharmacy counter, the exact tune Camille used to sing when rocking them to sleep in her arms. That lullaby wasn't just any song. It had never been on the radio, never published anywhere. It was hers, and hers alone, crafted in the quiet of late nights with 3 babies in one crib, a song woven from love, desperation, and exhaustion. Now one of them hummed it without knowing why, like a muscle memory reaching across decades of silence. Camille turned to her side, opening the old floral box she kept beside her bed. Inside were artifacts of a life that had long since been taken from her, the faded photo of their 4th birthday party, with Layla missing her front teeth, Amara clutching her favorite doll, and Nia with frosting smeared across her cheek. She touched each face with the tip of her finger and felt her chest tighten. Her fingers moved next to a tiny hospital bracelet marked Baby C. Johnson, and then to a folded piece of paper, her final court document from 2003, the one that sealed her fate. Petitioner deemed emotionally unstable and financially incapable of custody. That phrase had followed her for years, shadowing every appeal she filed, every attempt to get someone, anyone, to listen. But none of them saw the truth. None of them cared that the man she once trusted had destroyed her life in one violent night. She closed the box and sat up, the ache in her bones sharper than ever. It had been 23 years, but the memory of that night was carved into her like a scar that never fully healed. It was September 2002. The night summer gave way to fall, and Camille remembered every detail. The sound of the screen door slamming, the cheap rum on Jamal's breath, the way his voice roared through their apartment like a wave crashing against a fragile shoreline. "You think you're some kind of mother?" He had spat, his voice thick and slurred. "You can't even keep the lights on without me." The girls were in the other room, 3 little bodies curled on the mattress they shared, unaware of what was coming. Camille had worked a double shift at the diner that day, scrubbing floors and hauling plates just to make rent. She hadn't eaten. She was exhausted, her hair still smelling faintly of grease and burnt toast, and all she had asked Jamal was if he could help bathe the girls. That's what set him off. He'd lost his job 2 weeks earlier, again, and had been drinking more heavily ever since. That night, he grabbed her by the arm and shoved her hard into the wall. "I'm taking the girls to my mama's for the weekend," he growled, yanking open the bedroom door. Camille scrambled to her feet. "You're drunk, Jamal! Don't you dare touch them!" But he already had Nia in his arms, while Layla and Amara blinked groggily in the dim light. "They need to be around people who know how to raise children," he hissed, "not some broken girl playing house." Camille threw herself between him and the door, but he shoved her again, harder this time, and she fell, cracking her elbow on the hardwood floor. "I'll bring them back when you grow up and learn how to be a real woman," he snapped, and with that he vanished into the night, with all 3 daughters screaming his name. Camille had run after the car, barefoot, her voice raw from screaming, but the tail lights disappeared into the darkness. She called his mother, but there was no answer. She went to the police, shaking and bruised, but they looked at her torn shirt, the panic in her voice, and decided she was the unstable one. "You say he took them, but he's their father," one officer had said. "Sounds like a domestic matter. Let's cool off and see what happens." But Jamal never came back. And 2 days later, Darnell Carter filed a motion with the court, claiming Camille had abandoned her children. Armed with a lawyer and the full support of Jamal's family, he painted a picture of her as a negligent, unstable mother. Camille fought back, representing herself because she couldn't afford legal help, but the judge barely looked at her. She had no money, no address after being evicted, no chance. The court awarded Darnell temporary guardianship, and then, within a year, he managed to make it permanent. Camille spent the following years sleeping in shelters, working cleaning jobs, saving every cent to hire private investigators, but the trail always went cold. Until now, Camille stood from her bed, suddenly unable to sit still, and went to the mirror. Her reflection stared back, lines carved deep into her forehead, silver strands threading through her braids, eyes that had seen too much and hoped too long. She wasn't that terrified 26-year-old girl anymore. She was stronger now, and her daughters were grown. Maybe now they could hear her. Maybe now the truth could finally be spoken. The next morning, Camille returned to the pharmacy. She watched from across the street, unseen, heart pounding, eyes locked on the 3 young women through the glass. They laughed about something behind the counter. Nia brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, Camille's old nervous tic. Amara wore a necklace Camille had thought was lost forever, a delicate wooden pendant shaped like an African drum. Camille had bought it at a street festival in 2001 and worn it every day. How did Amara have it? She didn't step inside, she wasn't ready, but she needed answers, and she knew where they might be hiding. That night, Camille found herself walking through a neighborhood she once knew like the back of her hand. MLK Drive hadn't changed much, the same corner store, the same streetlight flickering near the basketball court, the same rusted gate in front of Darnell's house. She stood outside for a long time, watching the windows glow with life. She could see their shadows moving inside. Dinner time, probably. Laughter spilled faintly through the open window. A small part of her ached with joy at seeing them happy. But a deeper part screamed in anguish. She knocked. Darnell opened the door with a look of confusion that instantly twisted into disbelief. "Camille," he whispered, you can't be here." "But I am," she replied. "And so are they." Darnell looked over his shoulder, then stepped outside quickly, shutting the door behind him. "You need to go," he said, voice low. "You have no right to show up like this after everything." Camille's eyes narrowed. "No right? You stole them. You erased me." Darnell ran a hand over his head. "You were spiraling. You couldn't keep a job. You were losing it." "I was exhausted," she snapped. "Working 2 jobs while your brother beat me and drank every night. And instead of helping, you took everything." He was quiet. For the first time in his life, maybe, he looked small. "They're happy," he murmured. "They think I'm their father." "You want to destroy that?" Camille took a step forward. "I don't want to destroy anything. I just want the truth to exist again." Darnell said nothing. But in his silence, she saw something she hadn't expected: shame. And that gave her hope. Not because he felt guilty, but because it meant he knew, deep down, that love built on lies would always be fragile. Camille turned to leave, but not before saying, "I'm not going away. Not this time. I've waited 23 years, and now I'm here. You can either stand in my way again, or you can help me fix what you broke." She walked back into the night, the stars hidden behind Atlanta's glow, her footsteps steady, her voice finally ready to be heard. Camille didn't sleep the next night either, but it was a different kind of restlessness, no longer paralyzed by shock or grief, but powered by something more focused, more urgent, more alive than she had felt in years. She had seen them, spoken to them, confirmed they were hers, not just through a mother's intuition, but through memory. The voice patterns, the way Nia tilted her head while listening, the flicker in Amara's eyes when someone mentioned music, Layla's frown of concentration that mirrored Camille's own expression when she read. These were not coincidences, they were blood echoes, imprints of a maternal bond that time, distance, and deception hadn't erased. Still, she couldn't just walk back into their lives with a banner saying, "I'm your real mum." Not after all these years. Not when everything they knew had been carefully constructed around her absence. If she tore it all down in one strike, it would shatter them. She needed a way in, not as a mother, not yet, but as someone who could quietly reintroduce herself, person to person, without pressure, without panic. And she knew where to start. The next morning, Camille ironed the least wrinkled blouse she owned, tied a scarf neatly around her locks, and returned to the pharmacy with a smile rehearsed so tightly it hurt her cheeks. She stood in the aisle pretending to examine a shelf of supplements, waiting for a lull in customer flow. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs as she heard one of the girls chatting behind the counter. "He wants to celebrate our first full month at the pharmacy," Nia said, her voice warm, proud. "Uncle Darnell's planning a dinner tonight, just us and him." "He's always looking for an excuse to celebrate us," Layla replied. "You'd think graduating was the equivalent of curing cancer." "He says we're miracles," Amara chimed in. "Says no one expected triplets raised by a single uncle to all make it through pharmacy school with honors." Camille swallowed hard. So that was the narrative. Not just a lie about her being dead, but an entire mythology built around Darnell as the sole savior, the lone paternal hero who stepped up against impossible odds. It was compelling, it was beautiful, it was false. But part of her couldn't deny it was also effective. Her daughters were brilliant, clearly educated, compassionate, respectable young women. He hadn't harmed them, He had, in some twisted way, loved them enough to build them a future. Yet the love had come with a price, the theft of truth. Camille picked up a bottle of multivitamins and walked slowly to the counter. Amara greeted her with a now familiar smile. "Back again?" "Looks like I'm becoming a regular," Camille replied, feigning lightness. "You girls always seem to brighten the place." Layla rang up the bottle. "We try," she said. "Are you new to the area?" Camille hesitated, then nodded. "Just moved back, actually. Used to live in Atlanta a long time ago." "Oh yeah?" Nia asked. "What part?" "Near Edgewood," Camille said. "I moved away for a while. A long while." Amara leaned forward curiously. "You came back for family?" "Something like that," Camille said, her eyes holding steady. "I guess some routes never let you go, no matter how far you travel." The girls smiled, polite but curious. Camille could tell Nia was the most observant. She watched the way her eyes lingered longer, the way her brow furrowed at small inconsistencies. Later that week, Camille returned again, this time with a small container of homemade peach cobbler. "Just a little thank you," she said, "for always being so kind." The sisters lit up. "You didn't have to do that," Amara said. "But thank you, that smells amazing." "It's my mama's recipe," Camille replied, with careful truth. "Passed down from the south side. I grew up on it. Figured 3 hard-working young ladies might need a sugar break now and then." The cobbler became a ritual. Each week she brought something small, banana pudding, sweet tea, cornbread muffins, and in return she got stories. Layla was studying for a licensing exam. Amara wanted to open a specialty herbal line. Nia had a boyfriend, a shy dental student named Marcus, and dreamt of opening her own pharmacy one day. Camille cherished each fragment, each glimpse into their adult lives. They were whole. But so much of that wholeness had been built on a false floor. One Thursday afternoon, as the pharmacy began to quiet, Camille lingered as usual. Nia leaned on the counter, her expression thoughtful. "Can I ask you something, Miss Camille?" The name hit her like a soft bell. No one had called her that in years. "Of course," Camille replied. "You remind me of someone." Camille's heart skipped. "Oh?" "Yeah, I can't put my finger on it. There's just something familiar, the way you speak, I guess. Your scent." Camille tried not to panic. She hadn't worn that perfume in years. Only recently had she started again. A blend of sandalwood and orange blossom. "Must just be one of those faces," she said. "You know, the kind that looks like everybody's auntie." Nia smiled, but there was something deeper in her gaze. "Maybe. Or maybe it's something else." Camille left that day shaken, but also vindicated. Memory lived in bone and blood. They didn't remember her face, but their bodies remembered her presence. That night, Camille visited her old storage unit on the outskirts of town. Dust floated through the dimly lit space like tiny ghosts. She opened the battered trunk marked Seeb's Girls. Inside were the dresses from their last birthday party, little ballet slippers, a doll with a missing arm that Amara had once dragged everywhere, and photos, dozens of them, before everything fell apart. Camille pulled out a frame and stared at it. She on the couch, the 3 girls in matching pajamas asleep on her lap. Her eyes were tired but alive. That woman had vanished the day they were taken. But now, standing in the glow of a dusty bulb, Camille felt that part of herself waking again. She picked up the photo and whispered, "I'm still here. I'm coming for you." But she knew now it wouldn't be enough to quietly linger. They needed to know the truth, at least one of them. And she knew who it had to be. The next day, she waited until closing time. The pharmacy lights dimmed. Olivia and Amara left early. Only Nia remained. Camille lingered over vitamins again until she was the last customer. Then she approached the counter slowly, heart pounding. "Miss Camille?" Nia asked. "You're still here?" "Can I ask you something personal?" Camille said. Nia looked surprised. "Sure. Do you remember anything From when you were very young, before 4? Nia frowned. That's random. Some things. I remember a song. A lullaby, I think, but it's not a real one. I've tried Googling the words.
Nothing comes up. Camille's voice trembled. What were the words? Nia squinted, thinking. 3 little birds in the sky, flying high but always home by night? Something like that. Camille pressed her hand to her chest. I wrote that, she said softly. Nia blinked. What? That song? I made it up. I used to sing it every night to 3 girls in yellow pajamas who called me Mommy. Nia's mouth opened, but no words came. Camille reached into her purse and pulled out the photo, the one from the trunk. This is you, she whispered. And your sisters. On my lap. In our old apartment. You were 2 years old. Nia took the photo with shaking hands. She stared at it, frozen. Her breath hitched. That's my face, she whispered. That's me. Camille took a step closer, her voice breaking. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because I never stopped looking. I'm your mother, Nia. You were taken from me, lied to. And now I just want to know you again.
Nia looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. But he said you died. Camille nodded slowly. I know. He made sure you'd never come searching, but I'm here. I've always been here. The silence stretched, thick with emotion. And then Nia whispered, I don't know what to do. Camille placed a hand gently on the counter between them. You don't have to do anything right now. Just let this truth breathe. I'll be here when you're ready. And with that, she left, her soul trembling, knowing that for the first time in 23 years the wall had cracked and the light had started to pour in. Camille didn't dare hope, not fully, not yet, but the way Nia had held the photo, the way her eyes had shimmered with the start of recognition, had planted something between them, a fragile but undeniable truth. Camille knew from years of surviving on instinct that this seed could either bloom or be crushed, depending on every step she took next. She spent the next 2 days waiting, resisting the urge to return to the pharmacy, pacing the narrow floor of her apartment like a caged bird. She replayed the conversation in her mind 100 times, wondering if she had said too much or not enough, if she should have stayed longer or left sooner. Then on the 3rd day, just as she was beginning to spiral into doubt, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Can we talk? Nia. Camille stared at the screen as if the letters might disappear. Her hands trembled as she typed back, Yes, any time. Nia responded quickly. Tonight, 6 p.m. City Park, North Bench. Simple, direct. But the weight of that invitation was immense. At 5:45, Camille arrived at the park, the sky painted in bruised tones of purple and gold. The air held the thick scent of summer grass and distant honeysuckle. She found Nia already sitting on the weather-worn bench, shoulders tense, fingers laced tightly in her lap. Camille approached slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal unsure whether it should run or attack. You came, Nia said quietly, not looking at her. You asked, Camille replied, her voice soft. I almost didn't, Nia admitted. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I felt like the ground underneath me was moving. Camille sat beside her but left enough space between them. I understand. I really do. Nia pulled something from her bag, a copy of the photo Camille had given her. It had been scanned and printed. I showed this to Uncle Darnell, she said. Camille's breath caught. What did he say? At first, he told me I was being gullible, that people prey on emotions, that it was probably photoshopped. But then I pulled out that old necklace I found in the attic last year, the one that looks like the drum pendant you said you wore, and I asked him how it got there. He couldn't answer. He sat down, put his face in his hands and started to cry. Camille's chest tightened. He admitted it. Not everything, but enough. He said he didn't mean for it to go this far, that he was just trying to protect us, that he thought he was doing the right thing. Camille exhaled slowly. Did you believe him? Nia shook her head. I don't know what I believe right now. I just know I'm angry, and I feel lost, and I have so many questions that I don't even know where to start. Camille nodded. Then don't start with the questions. Start with what you feel. I feel betrayed, Nia said, her voice raw. I feel stupid. I feel like everything I've based my identity on is just scaffolding around a lie. Camille looked at her daughter, her firstborn, and wanted to reach out, to hold her, to undo every scar time had carved into her heart. But she held herself back. You are not stupid. You were raised in a version of the world that made sense to you. That's not your fault. And the pain you feel now, that's not weakness. That's truth pushing its way through the cracks. Nia finally turned toward her, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Why didn't you find us sooner? Camille's lips parted, then closed again. She'd expected this question. I tried with everything I had, but Darnell had friends, connections. He changed your names. He created papers that said I was dead. Every time I got close, the trail went cold, and I didn't have the money or the power to push through the system. I was just a woman screaming into silence. Nia bit her lip. Did you ever think about giving up? Every day, Camille whispered. But I never did. Nia looked down at the photo again. What were we like, as kids? Camille smiled sadly. Nia, you were the cautious one, always watching, always thinking before you acted. Layla was bold. She was the first to run, the first to climb, the first to shout her feelings. And Amara, she was soft, sensitive. She used to fall asleep with her hand in mine. Nia swallowed. She still does that, when she's scared. Camille blinked quickly to clear the tears. I used to sing to you every night, that song. You remembered it, even if you didn't know why. I thought I made it up, Nia said. It would come to me in dreams. Camille nodded. Some things live deeper than memory. They sat in silence for a while, the sky dimming around them, crickets beginning their nightly song. Finally, Nia spoke again. I want to tell my sisters, but I don't know how. They're going to freak out. Then don't do it alone, Camille said. Let me be there. Or at least, let me help you figure out how. Will you tell them everything? Nia asked. About the night we were taken? Yes, Camille said. No lies. Not ever again. Nia stood and turned toward her. I don't know if I can ever call you Mum. I don't even know if I can love you. Camille stood too, her heart aching but steady. You don't have to call me anything. You don't have to love me. I just want the chance to be someone in your life, however that looks. Nia looked at her for a long moment. Okay, she said, let's start there. The next day, Nia arranged a family dinner at Darnell's house. Camille waited nearby, hiding in the shadows of the street, her heart pounding as if she were back in court again, about to beg for a second chance she didn't deserve. Inside, Nia sat at the table with Layla, Amara, and Darnell. The tension in the room was thick. What's going on? Layla asked, her brows drawn together. Why the serious faces? There's someone I want you to meet, Nia said, her voice calm but shaking slightly. She's outside. But before I bring her in, I need to say something. The story we've been told about our childhood, it's not true. Uncle Darnell didn't raise us because our mother died. He raised us because he told the world she was dead. Amara's face drained of color. What are you talking about? Our mother, Nia said. She's alive. I met her. Her name is Camille. She never stopped looking for us, and Darnell lied to keep her away. Darnell opened his mouth, but no words came. Layla stood abruptly. Is this a joke? No, Nia said. It's the truth. That's impossible, Amara whispered. We have her death certificate. A forged one, Nia said. Darnell forged it. And then Camille walked in. The room fell silent. Layla's hand flew to her mouth. Amara stared at her as if seeing a ghost. Camille stood still, letting them take her in. No dramatic gestures, no tears, just presence. "Hello," she said softly. "I know this is hard, but I'm real. I'm here. And I never stopped being your mother." Layla stepped back, her eyes wide with disbelief. Amara looked down, visibly trembling. How is this even possible?" "Because someone decided you didn't need me," Camille said, "and I couldn't fight what I couldn't see." Darnell finally spoke, his voice hollow. "I did it to protect them." "No," Camille said. "You did it because you thought I wasn't enough." Layla turned to him.
"Is it true?" Darnell closed his eyes. "Yes." Amara's voice broke. "You lied to us, our whole lives." "I loved you," Darnell said. "That was always true, but yes, I lied. I made choices I thought were best. I was wrong." Camille looked at her daughters, all three of them now standing, silent, fragile. "I'm not here to tear down your family. I'm not here to replace anyone. I just want to know you, to be known by you." Layla's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know what to feel." "Then feel everything," Camille said. "Feel it all. And then when you're ready, we'll start again. Together, if you'll let me." And as the sun dipped below the Atlanta skyline, three daughters stood in the wreckage of a story they thought they knew. And for the first time in their lives, they saw it for what it really was. Not a tragedy, but the beginning of a second chance. As the sun dipped below the jagged edge of the Appalachian skyline, a restless wind swept through the pines surrounding Marion County.
The town seemed unchanged on the surface, yet underneath, the collective psyche was unraveling. It had been nearly 3 weeks since the disappearance of the 3 girls, and despite the influx of FBI agents, sniffer dogs, helicopters, and national headlines, there had been no trace of them, no clothing, no backpack, not even a disturbed leaf trail to indicate where they might have gone. Detective Rena Harris sat alone in the dim glow of her precinct office, her walls plastered with maps, printed texts, blown-up photographs, and highlighter scribbles tracing movements, theories, and timelines. A former Atlanta homicide specialist and now a quiet sheriff's deputy, Harris had never handled a missing person case of this magnitude, and certainly not one involving 3 black children from the same neighborhood, all taken within the same mile radius. The press was starting to turn ugly. Conspiracy theories flourished online. Local parents marched with signs in front of City Hall, demanding answers, and now rumors whispered about cover-ups. But what bothered Rena most wasn't public pressure. It was the nagging feeling she'd missed something right in front of her, something small, buried, but vital. The last known security footage from the gas station was run through enhancement again. There, at 5:47 p.m., was a shadowy figure in a dark green truck. His license plate was obscured by mud. The truck had stopped for 10 minutes without filling gas, then drove away moments before the girls were last seen at the park. The FBI traced dozens of green trucks in the region but found no match. Still, Rena had a gut feeling. That night, she didn't go home. She reopened a box of old town records, property deeds, and zoning requests, documents no one had paid attention to in years. That's when she found something odd, a rejected permit for land excavation dated back to 1982, same forest, same mile radius. The applicant was a now-defunct church group with vague ties to a disciplinary youth camp later closed for child abuse allegations. The land in question bordered the nature trail where the girls were last seen. Her pulse quickened. Had anyone checked that old campsite? She called her deputy, demanded backup, and within an hour a small search team was out in the woods with ground-penetrating radar. The place was overgrown, forgotten cabins, collapsed roofs, moss-covered swings still dangling in eerie silence. One of the radar hits, located under what used to be the chapel floorboards, returned a strong anomaly, a hollow cavity roughly 6 feet deep. They started digging. A rusted hatch emerged, bolted shut, hidden beneath decades of soil and debris. It took nearly 2 hours to open it, but when they finally pried it loose, a foul, musty odor rushed out. Flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing a makeshift bunker, cots, canned food, and 3 child-sized shoes covered in dirt. But no girls, just signs they had been there. Fingerprints were taken, and tests confirmed what Rena feared. The girls had been inside, not recently, perhaps a week ago, and then moved. The discovery electrified the investigation. News outlets descended like hawks. "Breaking! Underground bunker found! Proof girls were held captive!" screamed headlines. But with that came a cruel realization. If the girls had been moved, someone was one step ahead. Rena pulled surveillance records from the area, looked into landowners, ran phone tower pings, even requested satellite imaging. But it all turned up nothing. Every trail seemed to vanish. That is, until she received a call from an unlikely source, a postal worker from the next county who had found a discarded pink hoodie in a drainage ditch. It was sopping wet, torn, but the logo matched one that Layla James wore in her school picture. DNA tests came back 2 days later, positive match. The ditch was a mile off an abandoned railway route, the same one that ran past the old paper mill. Rena went there herself. The mill was sealed off decades ago, condemned after a fire that killed 2 workers, but the structure still stood, charred, skeletal, full of shadows. As she walked into the belly of the ruins, something in the ash-covered floor caught her eye, a Barbie doll, its limbs singed. She crouched and picked it up. Then she heard it, a faint echo. A voice? She called out. Silence. Then again, a faint rustling. Her heartbeat pounded. Weapon drawn, she followed the sound through a collapsed corridor, past a wall that had been recently shifted. Behind it, she discovered a narrow staircase descending into what must have been the basement storage level. The smell was metallic, the air stifling, but as her flashlight swept across the space, she saw something she would never forget, scribbles on the wall in red crayon. "We're still here." And 3 names. Amari, Layla, Zora. They had been alive, had written that, but when? She called for backup, and within minutes the area was swarmed. Evidence was collected, the scribbles, strands of hair, scraps of food. A neighbor in the area reported hearing a vehicle leaving the site the previous night. Dark, possibly a truck. Rena was losing sleep now, not just from exhaustion but from dreams of those girls calling for help. She became convinced that someone was watching, listening, perhaps even orchestrating this from the inside. She requested internal audits, background checks on every officer, every tip-line handler, even the volunteers. That's when another anomaly emerged. One of the volunteers who had helped early in the search had registered under a false name. The man going by Thomas Bell had helped hand out flyers, attended vigils, and even spoken at a town forum. But there was no real record of him. No one knew where he came from. His face didn't appear in DMV databases, and when the FBI ran facial recognition, it matched a suspect from a missing persons case in Arkansas. Same pattern, different town. Girl went missing 10 years ago. That girl was never found. Rena's blood ran cold. Whoever this man was, he had been close. Too close, perhaps even mocking them. The hunt shifted again, from a rescue mission to a race against time. A manhunt was launched. Sketches, bulletins, and even highway signs bore his face. But the man had vanished like smoke. Still, Rena felt they were closing in. Whoever he was moving the girls from place to place, but the radius was shrinking. Patterns emerged. Each new clue, each trail led a little closer to the town's outskirts, toward a stretch of old farmland no one paid attention to anymore. And then came the call that shattered everything. A young boy hiking with his uncle near a dried-up riverbed stumbled across a shoe sticking out of the mud. It matched one of Zora's. Nearby, a makeshift tent had collapsed. Inside was a Polaroid photo. It showed the 3 girls, dirty, pale, but alive, and they were holding hands. The news of the skeletal remains sent tremors through the town like an electric shock, piercing the community's fragile sense of closure that had only just begun to form. The coroner confirmed that 2 of the sets of bones belonged to children approximately between the ages of 7 and 9, matching Tamara and Nevaeh's ages at the time of their disappearance. But there was no trace of Layla, and that omission tore open new wounds, more questions than answers. Had she escaped? Was she still alive somewhere, or had her remains simply not been found yet? As the investigation swelled into a national case once again, media outlets descended upon St. Mary's in flocks. The girls' names trended on every platform. Civil rights activists demanded accountability. The FBI reopened all case files, and a special task force was deployed. Meanwhile, buried in the ruins of her grief, Jasmine wandered back into the house that had been vacant for years, the one her family had fled from after the trauma became unbearable. She sat on the bedroom floor where the girls once played and stared at the faded wallpaper, her fingers tracing outlines they had scribbled on the walls. Something about the house felt heavier than before, like the memories had calcified into the floorboards. That night, as if summoned by grief, she heard a knock at the back door. A young woman, no older than 20, stood in the moonlight. Her eyes were sunken, her frame delicate, and her hands trembled as she whispered, "I'm Layla." Jasmine collapsed before she could speak. When she woke up in the hospital, the world outside was already unraveling. The woman claiming to be Layla was in protective custody. DNA tests confirmed her identity. She had survived, but at what cost? Her story unfolded over long interviews, each one more horrifying than the last. The night the girls vanished, a man posing as a teacher offered them a ride home. He had a badge, a smile, and knew their names. They trusted him. He took them not to school but to an abandoned property across state lines where he kept them in a windowless basement. For weeks, maybe months, Layla couldn't recall time accurately, they were kept in darkness, fed erratically and punished cruelly. Then one day, Nevaeh became sick. The man panicked. He tried to treat her but only made things worse. When she died, he broke. Layla never saw Tamara again after that. She was told Tamara had misbehaved. Layla never saw the sun again until she escaped. She didn't know how long it had been. Her captor had gotten older, slower, and she had memorized his patterns. When she found an opening, she ran. She never looked back. Authorities traced the man to a remote cabin in Kentucky. He was found dead from an apparent suicide, the walls of his house covered in children's drawings, hundreds of tiny paper cranes, and newspaper clippings about the missing girls. But among those walls, one picture stood out, a sketch of Layla, older, with braids down her back. Underneath it, in red marker, my favorite one. The town fell into collective mourning and disbelief. There was outrage at the school for failing to follow up, at the police for dismissing early tips, at the system for letting a black family's cries for help go unheard. But Jasmine found no peace in the apologies. She clung to Layla as if trying to absorb the lost years into her own skin. Layla, in turn, barely spoke. Her trauma ran deeper than memory. She flinched at certain smells, shut down at loud noises, and sometimes wandered out of bed and sat in corners like she was still trapped in that basement. A therapist said her mind had built walls to protect her. In time, Jasmine learned to sit silently beside her, offering presence instead of pressure. But closure remained elusive. The town held a memorial for Tamara and Nevaeh, planting trees in their name near the elementary school. Jasmine spoke, but her voice cracked with the weight of both survival and loss. Layla didn't attend. She stayed in her room that day, tracing a single paper crane with her fingers for hours. One evening, months later, Jasmine found a note beside Layla's bed. It read, "I'm going to find the other girls." At first, Jasmine thought it was a trauma-fueled delusion. But then reports began surfacing of Layla visiting shelters and hospitals, interviewing women with missing time, collecting clues. She had become obsessed, not just with her own story, but with every missing black girl whose name had been forgotten. She kept a journal of names, dates, descriptions, and sketchings. And slowly, Layla transformed from a shattered girl into a quiet avenger. In 2025, she started a foundation named after her sisters, the the TNL project. Its mission was simple but radical: to bring visibility, justice, and remembrance to missing girls of color. Her first public interview aired on national television. She sat under bright lights and recounted her story in steady tones. "We were taken because we were invisible," she said. "So now I'll make sure we're seen." The camera zoomed in on her face as she added, "If someone had listened sooner, Tamara and Navia might be here. We cannot let silence be what buries our children." The clip went viral. Donations poured in. Volunteers from all over joined. One by one, cold cases were reopened. Layla attended every court hearing, every community forum, every vigil. And though she rarely smiled, there was a fire in her gaze that no longer flickered. Jasmine watched her daughter walk through pain into purpose and finally felt in her bones the shape of healing. The final mystery of what happened to Tamara remained unsolved, but in Layla's eyes there was a knowing that didn't need proof. "I hear her in the wind," she once told Jasmine, standing beneath the tree that bore her sister's name. "And I carry her with every step I take." St. Mary's never forgot again. Every year the town hosted a lantern walk where families lit floating candles for the missing. And leading the march was always Layla, no longer a ghost of tragedy, but the light that emerged from the deepest dark.